Call back to order the meeting of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors. Would the clerk please call the roll to reestablish a quorum?
Supervisors Frost. Here. Natoli.
Here.
Peters.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
You have a quorum. Item 56 is the fiscal year 2019-20 5-year capital improvement plan review and referral to the County Planning Commission for project consistency with the general plan.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. I'm Lisa Randall with the Office of the County Executive. Before you today is the draft 5-year capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2019-20 through fiscal year 2023-24.
And you are?
Lisa Randall with the Office of the County Executive.
Thank you.
This year's 5-year CIP includes 345 projects and a proposed funding of approximately $1.2 billion, overseen by 6 departments. Those departments are airports, general services, regional parks, transportation, waste management and recycling, and water resources. Beginning in fiscal year 2019-20, the Department of Technology will be presenting their technology improvement plan separately, which you will see later at today's meeting. Of the 345 projects in the CIP, there are 75 new projects added, which represent approximately 22% of the 5-year CIP. The CIP also includes needed projects that are currently unfunded for the Departments of General Services, libraries, and regional parks. There are 118 unfunded projects totaling approximately $145.3 million that will require funding in order to move forward. Cost estimates will be included in the final CIP to be approved by the board in June. Upon your approval today, the Office of the County Executive will forward the CIP to the Planning Commission for review of the projects for consistency with the county's general plan. The CIP will then be brought back to the board for approval as part of the fiscal year 2019-20 recommended budget process. We have representatives here from each of the departments should you have any project-related questions for the CIP. Thank you.
Any questions of the board?
Mr.
Yes, Supervisor Natoli.
Okay. I guess Mr. Frost punched up first, so if you want to
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. You sure? Okay. Yeah, if I could, I wanted to talk to the Parks CIP budget. And I guess my question is that in the budget over the next 5 years is just only 4 projects, of which one is money that's been set aside already, the McFarland Ranch Phase 1. And I guess what I see here from the standpoint of the CIP is everything's in the unfunded, even without, most of them with unidentified costs. And if this is our whole program for the next 5 years for county regional parks, I think it's sorely deficient. And so I guess my question is that what sort of level of consideration is either before the Parks Commission, before our parks staff, and if this is it, this is pitiful. My comment. So I guess if somebody wants to come forward and talk to how this might get bedded out further, but if this is all we project for 5 years, and with all, and we've identified funding for basically 3 projects. The McFarland Ranch was money that was set aside through neighborhood funding that was available through District 5. So all we have is American River Bikeway trail improvements, campus commons fencing, and the balance in Horseshoe Lake restoration, which we receive grant funds for. So we have very little county dollars in here. So I guess my question is that when do we have a chance to talk about some of these priorities and how they might get funded beyond just the normal budgeting process? So I guess I'll look to you, Rob, maybe Liz or somebody, but this is really, bare bones, and there's nothing here to really talk about.
I don't disagree with you, Supervisor Natoli. These projects are listed here as projects that have identified funding sources during this 5-year CIP process. As you referenced, there is a significant project list of what we call unfunded projects. And as I recall, there are over, I don't have it in front of me, but there are over 20 projects that are on that list. And as funding may become available from any variety of sources, including grants, relationships with third parties or other sources, the unfunded projects can come onto the CIP list. This is just reflective of projects that have known sources of funding at this point in time.
Rob, I guess to the maybe a little finer point too, the $4 million in bike trail improvements, that's Measure A. $1 million a year goes there. So what I read here is that there is almost non-existent general fund contribution contemplated over the next 5 years to parks projects. That is either totally grant reliant or a funding source that was dedicated through a voter enacted measure and or grants. There's no general fund contribution to the CIP. And I find that as a board member, on behalf of all of our constituencies, that's tough to stomach because basically it says it doesn't compete at all in the county priority listing when I see tens and hundreds of millions of dollars of projects, some which get county general fund in other categories, and county parks gets basically zero. And again, that's a conversation, I'm not going to direct a conversation for this board to have because as I look at the priorities here, regional parks is getting little or no general fund contemplated over the next 5 years. And before I'm willing to pass on this, let's come back to this in the budget context. We need to have some conversation about that, and maybe the Recreation and Park Commission can bring that forward, park staff, but this is clearly, in my view, deficient. If that's the only commitment we have is just either Measure A and or grant funds and nothing else goes into it from the general fund.
Yeah, there is
I've walked in right
general
this time.
general fund commitment is as you will see as we get into budget hearings is committed to parks operations and maintenance, separate and apart from the capital projects here. So when you talk about general fund investment into the county regional park system, it is there on the operations and maintenance side. You are correct, however, on the capital improvement project side in terms of discretionary revenues of the county or county general fund money, it is not, there is not a reflection of that in the CIP as it's presented.
And the CIP isn't just for something new that somebody wants. It's for restroom restoration. It's for fixing up facilities that have wear and tear. No matter how well maintained they are, they have a life cycle. I mean, that's talked throughout this document, every county building, every county facility. And, we just came through a fairly decent budget period. We may be encountering a little rougher go in the years ahead. But again, for us to say that, nothing besides general operations and maintenance and grant funding or dedicated source of Measure A, that's all parks gets.
Part of this could be a presentation issue too for us. What you see here is commitment of 100,000 and above. A lot of those examples that you have, if you have restrooms and other things, there is general fund commitment that we have that are below 100,000. And by the time we get into the budget presentation, I have Liz and Rob sit down with you and go over where those commitments are. You are correct in saying that that has been an issue for us as general fund money, not only just in parks, but a lot of the other county departments. We don't have the funds to put in there. That is something we struggle with on a yearly basis on how to bring money in. But we can present you a little bit better description on some of those improvements we need to do.
And I appreciate that, Nav, and certainly, Rob, your response as well. I guess as we go into budget deliberations, and we obviously do that annually, and there's items that come before us on a regular basis during the course of a year. But when I think about libraries and parks and roads, and and we talk about general fund, which are discretionary dollars that are in great demand, obviously much more demand than they are available in any given year. It seems to me, from the standpoint, though, of the general population of this county, of the 1.5 million residents, all walks of life, all ages, that this board needs to have a pretty robust discussion about that, because some of the other things that are obviously embedded in here, embodied in here, some come through legislation and litigation, but when it comes to jails and some of the other things that just get millions and millions and millions of dollars, and I'm not exaggerating, and some of those on an annual basis. And when I see what goes to our parks and to our libraries, our roads, and again, it's not because anything this board doesn't want to do, but I think we need to have the conversation, because otherwise that money will forever and all time be siloed off in those areas. They always get the first call, and then whatever scraps are left over, not because you designed it that way or we've designed it that way, but I think we need to have that conversation because the general public needs to know. because the things that get handed on down from high, from legislation, or things that get litigated, and then choices that we're given to make, it's reflected in this CIP very clearly for all the assets that this county holds in trust for all the people of this county. And that's the one reaction. Again, it's a general reaction. I don't want to overstate it, but I don't think I am. That, unless we have a discussion and make some determination here that we want to set aside some of those dollars beyond the operations and maintenance, but actually to, build facilities and then be able to maintain them, that's a challenge as well. Then it's never going to happen, because it won't happen in this. It won't happen in this book. I can tell you that much. If what I read here and my knowledge of the budgets over the last, couple of decades. So.
No, that's correct. Yeah.
And that's a challenge. And again, I guess I want to, beyond. I don't want to belabor today, but I want to have the conversation this next budget cycle in light of everything else, because it means those choices are made when you recommend budgets to us, because you've had direction, you have this document. If we adopt this document, then this is your marching orders. But if we say we want a different priority out of this document, then you have to build that into your consideration when you bring it forward for our consideration in future budget cycles. And so I guess I make the point, Mr. Chair, because as I read this, it's not a whole lot different than other years, but it's very stark to me that what goes into those things I think really benefit the general population versus those things that go to specialized segments of some of the responsibilities we have as a county. Thanks.
I think Supervisor Peters had a question relating to parks, so I was going to let her go first.
Thank you. I may not be remembering correctly, but I thought on parks, particularly at one point in time when it came to CIP, we had an aspirational list on here too. So we started collecting projects in an official capacity. For instance, the Ansel Hoffman fencing and road.
Those are under
not on
unfunded.
They're in the unfunded section.
That's the
I
list.
haven't
It's the
seen the
unfunded
It's in the
section.
back. It's the big section in the back for parks.
I think Parks has.
I've
They
got
have the
5
most
pages in
amount.
parks.
Yeah, go. It's in the back. It's in the unfunded. It's go back behind all the.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I guess okay, well, I'll get back there then and look at it. So these are projects that the staff has decided need to be funded, or on the funded list.
The way we view that is we collect all the projects and from input from different sectors that come in, and what does not get fitted to be funded, if we had the funds, that's the list that we will go to start pulling projects to start funding. They're not prioritized, they're just listed, but those are projects that we know at that moment that we have to do in the future.
Well, in the list in the back, it doesn't have any, I think it'd be helpful to know how many years it's been on the list.
Sure.
Okay. And
That'll be telling, but you're right.
perhaps some estimate of what the costs are.
Sure.
So if we were to get some money, we, in what did you call it, scraps, we might be able to fund a scrap.
That's correct. That's why that list is there. If we get scraps, we'll go to that.
Yeah, but you can't tell whether these are
No,
$500
understood,
million
yeah.
projects or 5,000.
Got it.
It used to be listed. You used to give an estimated cost.
Yeah, there was an estimate. It escapes me why we don't have it, but we'll correct that going forward.
Yes.
And I guess I'd like to see that it is added to the section on parks, not in the back. I don't know why you can't have a funded and unfunded in that section. So that if there's someone from outside the county that is looking at this list, they don't have to guess.
Okay, well,
They would know how to find it.
got it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Frost.
My question's relating to unfunded also, and I think I just want to understand the library. I never got a feedback on, when I first came the first year, library was listed in the SIP along with all the library projects. The next year, library was in unfunded, but it listed that there was an extra 200 or 300,000 plus 5 million in bond money that was already approved that could be pulled down. This is the third year, and now the bond money is no longer there. And I'm wondering if it feels like, I know I'm not saying we want to do that, but if someone came and said, I want to give you 15 million and all you need is a couple more million, Sue, that might be something we do. And if it's not there, if it disappeared over years, then I'm just curious to know where it's going.
So Kristen Yates, Office of the County Executive. So this is the first production document from a new budget system. And so first of all, the estimates that we had for parks in the past, the estimates that we had in the unfunded section didn't get compiled correctly, which is why we'll make sure that it's included in June, and we can provide it to you prior to that if you'd like. As far as the Orangeville Library, there is $5 million in FAF money sitting aside that should have been included here as per your request last year, and do the compilation. That's why it's not here, but we'll make sure it is. So you can see that the $295,000 that we've already spent to date, the $5 million that's been reserved for you for that library, and then any additional funding, it'll all be included in this unfunded page.
Thank you.
Okay.
Questions?
Okay, then,
Go ahead.
I would like to split this into two motions if I could, and if the clerk would put up the slide. So I want to adopt the recommended CIP project list, but exclude from adoption the projects that are listed on this slide.
So are we adopting this, or are we just approving this and sending this forward to the commission for future adoption by this board?
It's going to the County Planning Commission for project consistency with general plan, and it will come back in the budget.
Okay, so what the action is
To send it on to the County Planning Commission.
okay, that's all we're doing right now, forwarding.
Correct.
So, okay,
You have absolute ability in June to move projects around what we need to do.
thanks. Okay.
Unanimous vote.
I need another board member to, okay, first and a second.
Motion by the chair, second by Supervisor Frost.
And the motion passes with Supervisor Peters recusing. Item 57 is the fiscal year 2019 25-year technology improvement plan for review and approval.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. I'm Rami Zachariah, the County Chief Information Officer. The 2019-20 Technology Improvement Plan has 5 projects on them, 3 of which are continuing projects from prior years. Those projects are replacing the county budget development system, implementing a new county clerk recorder and cashiering system, and the Sheriff Department is implementing a new jail management system. Those projects are progressing, and we expect successful completion for those projects in the fiscal year 2019-2020. We also have 2 new projects added to the list. One of them is the county SAP ERP system. This is our financial and human resources system. It's due for a hardware upgrade that we do about every 7 or 8 years. And also we're working with the voting, with VRE to replace the vote by mail ballot processing infrastructure as well too. Those projects are also scheduled to start. Actually the vote by mail, it already started. I think you will see a report to the board in the next few weeks. The county SAP infrastructure upgrade is already in progress. Those are the projects that we have scheduled for next fiscal year. We have one unfunded project that continues to be our tax system. This is an area of great concern to all of us here in the county. The challenge is the system is going to be very expensive, and also there are no viable solutions out on the market as of yet. We're keeping an eye on the market, and if things change, and working with the county executive's office to find budget for that system replacement. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, thanks, Rami. So the upgrades in the IT area, those are in large part funded by the contributions by all of the departments that get assessed a certain portion of their annual budgets to provide, assuming they receive support from those systems. Is that how that works?
Correct. For the most part, we work with the departments in partnership to replace those systems. They work with the county executive office to secure funding for those projects.
So do they get money from the fixed asset fund, or is it just is the annual 2% for all the overhead that gets really, or roughly whatever that number is?
I don't believe that they come from the fixed asset financing.
So then they get, it's a 2% surcharge on all county
It's
departments?
whatever the surcharge is, it's not a fixed 2%, is it? It's not. There's no surcharge on it.
So okay, well then tell me, then,
So what we do is we charge direct allocation or indirect allocation to the departments that use it. And there's a charge that they're levied, that gets remitted to technology, and that's how they use to fund these.
and so in essence though, there are general fund dollars that go into this, correct?
Correct.
Because general fund departments buy into this either through indirect or direct allocation.
Depending on what the system is,
Right.
and if it's a general fund department, as non-general funds too. So everybody, like a budget system, that impacts general fund, non-general fund.
Right.
Criminal justice will be more targeted, it's general fund, but it's departments within the criminal justice system.
Is there a way to break out a number so we can see how much general fund via the annual budgets that are departmental assigned, that money then flows back through for these particular projects?
I think we can do
Okay,
that.
yeah. I'm curious in light of the last conversation, Rami. It's not so much about whether these are needed or not. And I know that's how we've traditionally financed these. And I would concur that, having an assessment system and tax collection system that functions properly in this day and age is going to be pretty critical for the transactional aspects of county finance.
Beyond that piece, as Rami indicated, some counties have gotten into replacing, and then they found out the technology they were buying was not helping. So this is a huge challenge. It's not only the monetary piece, it's the technology behind that's not being developed.
So, and I guess just one other question on that particular point. How far away are we, do you think, either from a solution and/or from really beginning to hit the wall, so to speak, when it comes to the capabilities of the, current system and its support within the, the software framework and so forth? So, are we critical right now, or is it just, we're in a situation where it's needed?
I think we're in a stable position right now. The infrastructure for our mainframe has been upgraded. It's functioning. But this is not a solution that we could look at to stay in for the next 10 years or so.
Okay.
Again, like Nav said, if there was a credible solution out there, we would be pursuing it. But as of right now, I know several counties are trying, but there is nothing that has made it successfully to production yet.
Okay, so
At a pretty high-level conversation we have with the county, other CAOs or county exec, if somebody does come up with a solution that everybody is happy, we're all willing to participate. It's just that solution is not coming forth at this point.
Okay, but we're not in a critical situation to hear what Rami says, because
No, I don't see us at risk of producing our tax bills or anything, at least for the foreseeable future.
And so our mainframe and all the software that goes behind it, it's all still supportable?
It is supportable, and we have staff that work on it. It's just, again, I think from a longevity point of view and looking into the future,
It's aging, yeah.
Yeah, this is not a system that we want to stay with.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I move to approve.
Second.
Thank you.
Unanimous vote with those members present. Item 58 is the amendments to the bylaws of the Lock Management Association.
Chair Kennedy, members of the board, Rob Leonard, Deputy County Executive. In April of 2003, the Board of Supervisors at the time took a series of actions that were necessary to align the real property underneath the structures in the town of Locke, located in the Sacramento Delta, with the structures that rested on that property. At that same time, the action of the board created two different organizations, the Locke Management Association and the Locke Foundation. The purpose of the Locke Management Association was to essentially own, manage, and maintain the common areas in the town of Locke, the parking lots, garden area, and walking easements, and to levy and collect monthly assessments to take care of the assets that I just mentioned, along with liability insurance. The purpose of the Locke Foundation, which was also created at that point in time, was to serve as a fundraising and marketing and promotion organization, recognizing the historical identity of the town of Locke and to provide resources for its future. On that, with that action in April of 2003, the bylaws were established for those two bodies, for the Locke Foundation and the Locke Management Association. The composition for those bodies was established at the time, along with the structure for modification for those bylaws if at some point in the future those bodies, along with those that they represent, saw fit to make modifications to those bylaws. The protocol for modification of those bylaws included certain triggers that would see actions necessary to be considered by the Board of Supervisors if they were looking to make changes in those respective bodies. For example, change in composition of the Board of Directors for either organization would require an action of the Board of Supervisors. And so in February of 2019, the Board of Supervisors was presented with proposed revised bylaws for each of those bodies, the Locke Foundation and the Locke Management Association, which were generated by those bodies themselves, engaging with the property owners of Locke as defined in the bylaws for those bodies. On that date in April of this year, the Board of Supervisors did approve the Locke Foundation bylaws. And
February.
In February of this year, the board did approve the proposed bylaw changes for the Locke Foundation, and then directed that county staff conduct a poll for to gain insight as to the Locke community, the property owners' position regarding their agreement with the proposed bylaws to the Locke Management Association bylaws. And that poll was conducted, and I'll walk you through the results of that in just a moment. I did want to circle back to a key point as reflected in the bylaws. When there are changes proposed to the Board of Supervisors, in essence, the board has to consider those bylaw changes as proposed, in that the Board of Supervisors cannot unilaterally change or direct changes to the bylaws as proposed. It's in essence an approval or a denial of the bylaw changes as presented by the respective body. And so again, on February 5th of 2019, the board approved the proposed bylaw changes as submitted by the Locke Foundation, and then requested that county staff conduct a poll regarding the position of Locke property owners on the bylaw changes that were proposed by the Locke Management Association. And so I'm going to share with you the results of the poll that we did conduct, and then recommend that the board ask Russell Olmus, the chair of the Locke Management Association, to come forward and describe the process that the Locke Management Association pursued to develop those bylaws along with the changes themselves. And so the results of the poll question, it was a single question that we proposed to the property owners in the town of Locke. Do you agree with the proposed revisions to the Locke management or LMA bylaws? Circle yes or no. And so a poll was sent to, this question was sent, certified mail return receipt to 49 property owners in the town of Locke. The recipients were identified through collaboration by clerk of the board staff with the assessor's office, and then also correlating with the Locke Management Association with their records. So there were 49 recipients. The poll was sent, single sheet poll with that question I mentioned, which is included as an attachment to the report. 49 were sent certified mail return receipt. There were 4 of the 49 were not signed for or received and came back to the clerk's office, bringing us down to 45. At the time that the board report that's being presented to you today went final, there were 5 that were signed for but not received by the deadline date of March 15th, 2019. And of those that were received, 23 responded with a yes, that they agreed with the proposed changes to the Locke Management Association bylaws, and 16 said no, they did not agree. Then we did receive 2 responses after the March 15th deadline. One of them was able to reflect in the report, and that was a yes vote, bringing the total yes votes to 24. And then there was another response received since the report was published and went final, and that was a no vote. So essentially the final numbers were 24 responding yes and 17 responding no. And so that summarizes the response. And again, that question was, do you agree with the proposed revisions to the LMI bylaws? 24 yes, 17 no. In preparation for the meeting today, notices of the meeting were posted at the Locke Boarding House bulletin board in the community of Locke, and also down at the Walnut Grove Library. And then hard copies of the board material were also delivered to each of those locations.
When was that posted? When was the posting?
Flo?
I believe it was April the 5th. Let me just double check.
Okay, so more than 72 hours ago.
Correct.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Correct. And then when the board materials for today's meeting became public, hard copies were provided to at each of those locations for individuals to pick up. This is the same protocol that we followed with each of the hearings as we proceeded through this process. And then also on that meeting notice, there was a link provided for anybody that wanted to access the material online. And so that concludes my presentation, and would suggest that perhaps the board ask Russell Holmes to talk about the process that the Locke Management Association went through to develop these proposed bylaws, and then also the changes themselves.
Oh, he's got somebody coming up, he said.
Okay, I'm sorry. Are you asking me? No, go ahead.
Yeah.
But I do have members of the public that are scheduled to speak, so it's important if they want to take comments before or after public.
Here to public comment.
Okay, my name is Russell Ohms. I am the current chairman by default of the Locke Management Association. I bring with me the information that was provided for everyone in town. It was disseminated by the Locke Boarding House where we all meet, and it was there for anyone to take, and I'm sure that the notifications the county did were over the top. So pretty simple. The changes, we're changing the membership from 13 to 9 to make the board make it easier for people to show up. With a 13-member board, it was always difficult getting people to show up. And the other thing is that the county is losing their seat, and we're taking away 2 seats of from the Chinese cultural organizations, and we're taking away the state park seats. None of those seats have been filled in, I think, 4 or 5 years, some 6 or 7. So we've been working with a 13-member board, but only 9 people actually are seated. So we've worked there. So that's about it. We will now, I understand, I did not know this, we did not know this, that we would not be under the Brown Act. We thought we were going to, even after these changes, the Brown Act would still apply. So now we're going under Davis-Sterling. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a very onerous, very complicated, accountable system. So we are more accountable. And again, we're a volunteer, unpaid, yet still liable for fines, and we hold ourselves accountable to the members of the LMA, which are the building owners. The reason I think there are 53 separate buildings, and every building has a vote. So some people own 5 buildings, so they get 5 votes. That was the way it was set up. So I do and I don't look forward to being under the Davis-Sterling. I hope to have a seminar with an accountable firm to come down and teach us Davis-Sterling. One thing to note, 13 years ago when the board set us up, we were given bylaws, CC&Rs, that were written by a committee of 8 or 10 people that met for a year. Don, you were a part of that committee. But after that, we had no direction. No one told us about Robert's Rules of Order. We didn't even know what the Brown Act was until 5 or 6 years later. And the early chairman ran it. The meetings, as I said, would last 6-7 hours with people screaming and hollering, and there was no formality to the meeting. So that's what we've done. We've come up to speed. We run it very efficiently. And there's another thing is there's a lot of misinformation out there that no one comes to us to speak. And I wish that they would talk to the principals, to the directors, but they don't. They don't come to the meetings. They don't come, a lot of people. But a lot of people do, and we've learned that they're in agreement and they support us. And I think that's why the vote went the way it did, because people who agree don't talk, and the people that they do. So any questions?
Questions?
At this juncture.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Lisa, and I'm afraid I can't read your name. Is it Kirk? Thank you.
So I've been a business owner in Locke for 13 years. I'm the one that wrote the district attorney about the Brown Act because they weren't following it. I don't attend meetings because they've never understood the Brown Act, and nobody has ever enforced it, so I gave up a long time ago. Before you today, I am asking that you retain a county-appointed person. For 13 years, I've hoped that someone would fix the sidewalks. Instead, we got involved with lawsuits. It is vital that you keep a county-appointed person on this board because they don't understand or know what to do. They've said that to you 1,000 times. The sidewalks are essential. If this becomes a homeowners association, no one is going to give them money to repair the sidewalks. Right now, you've had taxpayers pay for the county lawyers to tell them how to get out of what you created into a private homeowners association. That's bizarre. You need to keep the seat. Also, in the article, I think it's Article 12, the memberships, even if they go to Davis-Sterling, those members that pay this assessment don't even get to vote on the amended changes. That poll you sent it out to people that don't pay the assessments. There are 3 business owners, women business owners in Locke, that didn't get that poll. We don't own property. We have no say. But you didn't even you know, if you want, make them go back to their membership and get a real vote of these changes to the amendments. And I would suggest they change, I think it's Article 12, that would let their membership vote on these changes. Guys, you know, didn't even happen. Polling, you have people paying money each month, you know, for them to do something, and it's not being done, like the sidewalks, some of the common area problems. We don't really know. Plus, you gave them $60,000 in seed money. If they're gonna go to a private ownership, ask that they pay it back. You know, if your intent is to make them a homeowners association, which they are a common interest development / public entity at this point, if they're gonna go back to private, you know, make them pay back that money.
Ms. Kirk, could you wrap up, please?
All right, so, you know, I'm just asking you to keep account, even if you do it for one more year, and at least we can look at a sidewalk project. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Mendel?
Yes, hi. I am current secretary of the Management Association, the board of directors, and I'm a resident and a property owner. And I see I have a few residents, you know, neighbors here today. I'm glad they showed up today. I'm disappointed that they haven't showed up to any meetings. The board of directors, you know, we've really worked hard on, you know, looking at our bylaws. And, you know, honestly, it was after the county asked us to in conjunction with the foundation's changes. So we've done the best we can, and we really appreciate all the work that Rob's office did, the volumes of paper that have been distributed throughout the county and locally. A lot of work's been put into it. I'd just like to address some of the issues that I'll expect to be brought up maybe by some people who've showed up today, which is oversight, maintenance, and lawsuits. And it's really unfortunate that we've been short of funds because one person continues to sue us, continues to sue the association as a whole, and attacking individual directors. And that's really most unfortunate. It's just been holding back community progress. I do see a light at the end of that tunnel. And so that is connected to maintenance. And a lot of maintenance has been done by volunteers because we just haven't had the funds to keep up with maintenance issues. So I expect with the lawsuits over soon, cross my fingers, that maintenance will pick up. And oversight, I do believe, if I'm understanding what the county has been informing us, and June Powles-Mays has said that Brown Act will not be relevant, but Davis Sterling will be, that we will have many, many onerous laws to follow. And we look forward to that. And if the board decides that our changes are not sufficient or incorrect, then I would hope that you'd come up with some other answers, because we're open.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Esch?
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Thank you so much for hearing me. However, Mr. Leonard, I brought to your office yesterday an objection, and I wrote an objection on my public forum of any discussion of this matter, asking that you table it because it is a Brown Act violation. And I informed you, Mr. Leonard, and I informed the people in the lobby in Mr. Natoli's office yesterday that no posting has been made publicly on the board in Locke for this meeting. I have a photograph I took yesterday at 4 p.m. If you'd like to see it, I could show it to you, of the posting board, still showing the February 5th posting for the meeting that was in this room on February 5th. No posting has been made for this meeting. It is a Brown Act violation. There should be no discussion had. but since you're taking everybody's discussions and it's already Brown Act violations, let's keep going. Could you please show this on your screen for me? There are 26 voters in the general membership of Lock Management Association. 26 voters. There are oh, I'm sorry, thank you. There's a big math problem here. There's 26 or 25 members, 26 now, I believe. But 53 polls, according to your staff report. Mr. Leonard, you said there were only 49 polls that were sent out, and then another 4. It was confusing on your staff report, page 3 of your staff report. Anyway, even if there were only 49 polls sent out, there's only 38 assessed properties in Locke. Some of them are not assessed, and don't pay any property taxes. The State Park Museum doesn't pay, it pays 0 in property taxes and has 0 assessment, has no vote on Lock Management Association matters. Mr. Chu's 3 museums have no assessment tied to them, so there should be no votes for those 3 either. We can't figure out who got 28 extra polls or 14 extra polls if you count parcels. Perhaps now your list, mailing list shows that nine parcels on the mailing list are for Common Ground of Lock Management Association. Who got those votes? Who got to cast ballots in my name and in my neighbor's name? Was it Ms. Mendel and Mr. Ooms? Because we know how they want to vote. They want to privatize and to have free run and no oversight whatsoever. We ask that
Can you wrap
this
up?
board, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Please do not change the bylaws as proposed to you today. Do not change them. It'll throw us all under the bus.
Thank you. That's the last public comment.
No, there's more people in here in Locke that.
Well, I have no more cards that have been turned in, ma'am.
Well, maybe they didn't know.
Well,
Mr.
if anybody would like
Morales
to,
and
if
Mr.
anybody would
Howard.
like, ma'am, please, if anybody would like to speak, please fill out a card, and I'm more than happy to entertain you at the dais, or at the podium. And if you could fill out a card afterwards and give it to the clerk for the record, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
My name is Ning Ho, Ninghou, and I've been living in Locke for 23 years with my wife, Patricia Conway. And we moved in there in 1990 for a long time. And the reason I usually don't go to the meeting since 2003, and I found out the association there, Locke Association and Locke Foundation, doing a lot of things, make all the neighbors not very happy, and I'm not very happy. Recently, they removed my fence. The fence belonged to the founder of the town, Ping Li, and his family. They are the original founder of Locke. And the garden space I've been using very often because I don't know, you can investigate. I am a world-renowned artist, and my favorite subject is irises. They've been stolen, dig my irises out, take all off my fence, and also they didn't do any improvement. And I think they spent a lot of money for our association fee to sue the individual person, and that person was a female. And I think Locke, if we continue without a supervisor from county, I think it will be in danger. And I don't want a Locke looks like a Texas Waco. And I think that there's a bunch of white supremacist people there. And I'm very angry with that because I'm working for present governor and lieutenant governor for past 11 years. And I never raised about those questions to the governors. And in the Capitol used to be all my painting to represent the United States. And I hate to say it, I was a renowned #1 artist in the world, and they just burning my backyard, basically. I have no supply, so my gardens are lost, and I don't know what to say. I only want to say 3 things. I want a county to involved with supervisor. I don't think a lot of people there has ability to lead the town, to unite everybody. And I know it used to be Chinatown, but don't have to be Chinatown.
If you could make your final 2 points. You're
Okay,
out of
3
time.
points. #1 point, we need a supervisor from county.
Okay.
And number 2, I write down here, only 3 points. Number 2 is I never had a chance to choose the leader for either association leader by my wishes, and I never had a ballot to vote.
Okay.
Number 3 is I really deny, like Masa said, deny bylaw, and that means we have Locker is not just a Chinatown. Locker is belong to Sacramento County, and I don't think the local people can do a good job.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to address the board at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Mr. Natoli?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to thank our staff for their follow-through with regards to, as requested, and certainly this board supported in our February discussion, the posing the question to folks and doing it in a way that obviously tried to reach as many folks with notice and certainly with some lead time to respond. I was going to say, too, I'm very respectful of that process, and there have been obviously other pieces of information that have been submitted as a part of what we've all received here leading up to today's discussion. And I think one thing is apparent to me, and I'll get to the bylaws in just a second, is that there's a fairly deep division within this community. It's reflected in the vote. It's reflected in comments, I think, that folks have received, my colleagues, both written and potentially by phone. But I think that there's still a common theme here. People want good for that community. They recognize the significance, certainly culturally, historically, the viability of its everyday daily life in the town of Locke, and something I think that was very, very important to this board and has been since the times when we entertained what we could do to support its physical infrastructure, i.e. With the reuniting of the land with the buildings that had been a part of the I think historical scar on Locke. This board, it's certainly working with the Housing Redevelopment Agency at the time, and community members, property owners, and business owners, other cultural organizations within the county worked very, very hard. Many community meetings and certainly a good deal of input. And out of that came part of what we're talking about here today, and that was a design at the time to provide for self-governance with a cross-sectional representation of property owners, of business owners, of cultural organizations, and then the county of Sacramento and at the time state parks. Obviously, as people have spoken here to it today and in past meetings, it's been clear that some of those seats, there's no denying it, have either been vacated and or have stood vacant for a period of time. And again, I want to certainly compliment our staff. I know that Mr. Leonard and certainly Ms. Palmays on behalf of County Counsel's office have been of assistance in attempting to gather the information, certainly to take the input from the Management Association representatives that currently serve on the board, but also the townspeople and other community members. And it's kind of hard to believe, but it's been well over a year since we had 2 community forums. And obviously, we've had this on our agenda a couple of times since then. And so, as I reflected on this, certainly listening to today's testimony and recognizing, I think, the good work. I never want to disavow that, the good work that's occurred over time and some of the improvements to the town of Locke, and obviously the engagement by members of the community, that I am not prepared, I'll just say this, in regard to basically sever the tie with the Management Association, at least at this juncture. And again, I respect in reflection in the vote that was, or at least the poll that was taken, the poll that was taken. But I think that the county has tremendous responsibility with the creation of this association. Obviously, having a seat there, it needs to be filled, and if this board agrees, then I'm prepared to make a nomination, bring it before this board, obviously, to fill that seat. But I think the deep divisions, as reflected in what we have here, some of those might not ever go away, but part of it is the transparency. It goes to, and again, I'm not a scholar of Davis Sterling, nor necessarily of the Brown Act, but I understand the Brown Act and its functions. And I think that's been an important part, because it's allowed for, as raucous as it may have been, as difficult as it may have been, it's allowed for public discussion and debate, and it has some requirements to go with it relative to posting and to noticing, and those have been challenged. And again, I would certainly want to recognize that, if we aren't experts in it, to expect community members to be expert in it is probably unrealistic expectation. But I think the general adherence to the Brown Act is important, and I know that Ms. Powell-Mays pointed out at the last hearing that Davis Sterling has some similarity in its requirements. But I think that at this juncture, and it might be argued that at any point in time that it's pivotal that we do something or not. Again, this has been many months, if not a couple of years, in getting before us. And I guess one of the things that struck me today is that we can't unilaterally change the bylaws. I recognize that. I respect that. I think that having some discussion, and I'm certainly prepared to, again, if this board would like, to delve into a bit of the detail and to say some of the things I think that, at least from my perspective and from what I've heard from folks, probably would find favor with a good majority, if not a majority of the folks. But I think it is essential that the county's continued involvement via a standing seat. Again, I don't disagree it should be filled, and certainly take some responsibility with regards to that as the supervisor of the district. But I do think that some of the elements here that were built in relative to descendancy and ascendancy, I think had good intent behind them. May not have certainly played out the way that it was anticipated, and put certainly a fairly heavy burden and requirement on the LMA and its membership in order to accomplish those things. But I do think that as it relates to election of officers, as well as election to the board, or selection to the board as being proposed here for the terms, those are essential elements. And it goes to this self-governance. And again, there was no tried and true recipe for how we were going to do this. And again, I think that it was certainly an honest and a solid attempt to do that, recognizing that maybe in reality it's been every bit as challenging as anyone could imagine. But I don't think that warrants the county's stepping away at this point in time. And again, that's one of the essential elements, obviously, to what the LMA and working through their community forum and their process has brought to us. And for that point alone, I would send this back to the LMA, recognizing it has to be initiated at that level. I think that it would be done certainly in good faith to continue conversations with the community, certainly with the LMA representation. It may be, again, with another detail element here, that the community organizations, the cultural organizations that were reflected as part of that if that's handled by one representative versus three, then that may be acceptable as well. Obviously, state parks made it clear a long time ago they weren't going to serve in that capacity. So I think that some restructuring is probably very appropriate, but I also think it's appropriate at this time. And again, that might be against even some of the legal advice we receive, that the county created this, that we stay engaged and involved. And obviously, it's required a lot of staff time thus far, but I think with the divisions that are there, I don't know that those are going to be healed by anything that this board would do, either through an appointment or otherwise. But I do think that us maintaining that connectivity is very, very important at this juncture. And again, it's not inappropriate that we have this discussion. But I do think there were a lot of, as one of the speakers referenced, there were a lot of public dollars that went into the infrastructure, as well as to, I think some of the improvements have gone on there. It's complemented obviously by some of the private investment and some of the nonprofit investment that's been brought to the town. But I know, and you as board members, and I've heard from folks, again, some of the things that Ms. Mandel spoke to, that this, need to maintain, the sidewalk areas, some of the common areas, and the challenge is presented by having a fairly small pool of folks by which to draw the assessments from to accomplish that, and then in light of other things that have taxed their abilities as it relates to the use of the monies that they do collect. But there is a structure that I think can and should function, and it may be that in sending this back, that again, certainly respecting the association and the membership and the poll as we received it, but the conclusion I draw is that there is still a deep division, and that the county should maintain its connectivity to this association and keep the Brown Act coverage that has been in place from the get-go, and that structure and what it means to certainly to open meetings and to the transactions that are a part of the Management Association's responsibilities. And so with that in mind, and again, if you want me to bore in some more detail, I can, but I think we should today not approve what's before us, and particularly in light of the county seat, but with some suggestions as to Brown Act and such. And that's my view at this point, and I'm prepared to make a motion at some point in the conversation here.
So before I could, Supervisor Frost, Supervisor Natoli, are you asking for this to be voted down today, or are you asking for a continuance most likely?
Well, as the way it was presented by Mr. Leonard was that it was either up or down. I'm prepared to send it back to the association. I don't want to be harsh in that, just saying that, it's outright reject everything that's before us, because there are elements, as I spoke to briefly, Mr. Chair, that I think are acceptable. They certainly reflect, the process, and are not areas that I've heard, at least to this juncture, contest over. There are other elements that some of which I spoke to, which are, and I think in that light, if it's totally an up or down, and maybe Tracy, you can weigh in, then I don't know, we have anything, I guess we can continue it and ask them to, without just saying it, that we reject it, and ask them to do some more work on it. That way we retain it here. So,
County Council.
Thank you, Chair Kennedy. It is an up or down vote. It is either accept and pass or reject, and then it would go back. The rules would remain as they are now. The bylaws would remain as they are now. It is really that simple.
Okay.
It cannot be, if you continue it, I'm not sure what that discussion will entail or what you'll gain from that.
Well, I don't know that it would entail any different discussion than if it goes down and we have to come, and we're, as Supervisor, we're not back to the drawing board, but we're...
If it goes down, the bylaws remain as they are. The county would remain part of the board. The bylaws would remain as they are now, not amended. And they would have to start all over again if they want to try to amend the bylaws.
Could we not remand it back to them?
You can make suggestions, certainly.
Yeah.
By rejecting, on the up or down vote, by rejecting it, that is in effect a remand to them. It does go back to them, and then it is up to that body to make a decision on where they move next.
Okay, I understand. Supervisor Frost, if you don't mind indulging me for 1 minute.
No, sure.
Thank you. I guess I was prepared to come here and support this for a number of reasons. One is, we've heard it so many times, and so much time has been put into it. But out of respect to the supervisor who represents the district and is most familiar with it in the area, I am prepared to let this go another iteration. But what I would really, really hope that we don't see is that, if this comes back to this board, I'm voting next time. This is just getting, in my mind, it's ludicrous that this is dragging on and on and on. And what I would ask of my colleague, showing the adept ability to cut very difficult deals like in South Mather, where you had even more warring factions than you do here, I think, in many ways. And you crafted through community input and negotiations something that was palatable to all sides, and I commend you for that. So with those abilities, I hope that you will infuse yourself into this so that we don't have to have this drag on. I mean, I've only seen it for 5 years, any longer than it has to. Supervisor Frost.
If I could just respond to that. I'm certainly willing and have been, and again, I think we've taken different steps, and part of it was getting it to us, and we broke the foundation off at the last iteration of this. And so, again, I'm prepared to do that, to sit, and we'll sit in a very public setting and have that conversation, and again, certainly with respect to the LMA board, as well as the citizenry and the property owners, and to, look at what might be crafted. Again, it has to be a product of the LMA in order for us to act on it. That's, and that was kind of an interesting take on all this. But again, I am prepared to do that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Frost.
I have a question relating to the process, the process that we went through. I guess there were some postcards or a letter that was mailed out to all the community members, and there was a person who spoke publicly and stated that there were the number of communications that were sent out was far greater than the amount of residents, and it was sent out to people that were not appropriate to be voting members. I wondered if you could speak to that, because it sounds like the board was happy to make the changes based on the fact that a lot of those members on their board were not attending the meetings, and so they were having trouble getting a quorum, and having trouble with involvement with the board. But also, based on your report that you gave, and tell me if I misunderstood it, it sounded like the board was in favor and the community was in favor based on the voting that we received back. And so I can support what Supervisor Natoli wants, since it's his district, but I wonder if we're superseding a democratic process of sorts, that if we can actually do that.
Well, the poll that was done, as requested by the board, was purely advisory in nature. There was no legal requirement for that. It wasn't a defined part of any structured process. It was simply to poll or ask the question as to community, and in this case property owner support for the bylaw changes that had been prepared through the process that the LMA administered. Pure and simple. And so with that, we saw the response, as I mentioned, to 24 to 17, 24 in favor of the proposed bylaws as prepared by the LMA through a process that engaged with the community, versus 17 that were opposed to that. And that is simply advisory to your board in your consideration of the bylaws. And so in regards to the numbers, I really can't comment on that. If you're just doing the simple math at the top, if you take 49 that were sent out, and then there were 4 that were with no confirmation received back by the board, the numbers start to line up, but I can't speak to the specifics. I haven't had the opportunity to understand Ms. Esch's analysis versus what we did.
But this is a private management association.
That's correct.
And they voted to change their bylaws, but I guess because we've been involved over time and we were part of the original formation, we have to approve everything this private management association does.
That's correct, because the Board of Supervisors acted to create those first bylaws back in 2003. And those first bylaws did include a protocol or a process for if at any point in the future that body, either the Lock Management Association or the Lock Foundation, wanted to change their bylaws, if certain changes were to be proposed, those bylaws, which were approved by the board in 2003, said that those bodies would have to come back to the board for the board to conduct a hearing and approve the change in bylaws. So that's essentially what's happening, what has been happening.
And what was the vote on the board again? I'm sorry, for the change of the bylaws?
Again,
Was it a unanimous?
17.
No, the board, the 9-person board.
Yeah, maybe.
It was unanimous that the board wanted to change it? Yes. Okay.
Russell, why don't you come to that?
There is much intentional confusion about this issue, and it's really hard to watch it.
I'm confused. I'm sorry.
I know you are.
Thank
I
you.
understand why you are. There are 50 buildings. That's why there are 50 votes. And that's why, no doubt, they sent out 50 polls. But of those, I believe there are 32 owners of those buildings. So really, 1, 2, 3 people could constitute 15 votes. There are people that own 5 buildings.
I got it.
So that's what confuses the vote. It's just very hard. I sat down in 2003 with Don Natoli and told him in his office that this was created, wouldn't work. And we sat there for an hour, went back and forth, because I could see what was happening. It's unwieldy, 13 people, it doesn't work. And what's happening now is one person is creating the narrative for this town. One person, and that's what we've been involved with. The SPA was changed because of this one person. We're here because of this one person. We're in court because of this one person. All the legal filings, we've been 5 lawsuits because of one person. So this is one person. This entire room right now is being consumed. Our time. You have any idea how much time? I mean, I have to dress, change, come here. I mean, I'm doing this for free. You guys are paid, okay? So one person has created it. So I'm really looking forward to having a private board governed by Davis Sterling that we can bring our members in and not be intimidated by social media with this man here. This man has come to every meeting and photographs us. I once stood there with 3 cameras on me. I'm in a little box in lock with 3 cameras, video cameras. Every word I'm saying, like now. This will be posted tonight, and I don't know what the heading. He usually videotapes us, and nothing controversial happens at the meeting, and the heading will be the board, LMA board does something nefarious. We are intimidated.
I think you've answered.
Okay, so you get what we want. And I don't know why Don is not on our side. I do not know. And the people that spoke today, we don't talk to. They don't come to meetings.
Okay.
They have their own life.
I think
Sorry.
you made your point. Thank you.
Yeah, I got my point made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I'll, for now, just sit back. I think Don is on everyone's side. He wants it to be equitable. That's the impression what I know about Supervisor Natoli. So I'll defer to the next person.
Supervisor Peters.
Thank you. I have been on this board since 2005, and this has been an issue since then. And we have had meeting at the Board of Supervisors, not all the meetings that the 2 organizations have, meeting after meeting, people screaming at each other. And I think the process was flawed when the 2003 action was taken in good faith, but it just set the scenario for people to be mad at each other. And I think we've heard about it enough, and I think also until the organization goes on its own and doesn't have the Board of Supervisors to run to, which delays everything and confuses it. Obviously, some people, the stories are so different, someone is not telling the truth. And I think once you're on your own, you would be able to figure this out. We had a vote of the landowners. Someone mentioned tenants didn't get to vote. Well, tenants don't vote because it's landowners that get to vote on something like this. It was 24-17. To me, that's a clear majority, and I would move to approve this proposed Lock Management Association bylaw change.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'd like to hear Supervisor
Well,
Well, you can second the motion if you like, and just, we have a motion on the floor. We need either a second or it dies by lack of second. Supervisor Natoli.
yeah. Well, yeah, I certainly appreciate the sentiments of all my colleagues, and this isn't a matter of taking sides. I'm very concerned about the future of Locke. Locke has been here long before anybody in this room was, for the most part, born, if not in totality. And secondly, it'll be there a long time after I've left this board and probably passed on. But I think my concern has been is that if we're going to exit, because what this vote equates to today, if in fact we took up Supervisor Peters' motion, then we basically, the LMA is telling us, you're out, and then we say we want to be out. If that's what we want, then we certainly can choose to do that. But we've been all in for a long time. Now, the day-to-day irritation and friction and what goes on in the meetings and so forth, I get it. That wears on people, and whether it's people in this room or others that aren't here, and it certainly wears on my colleagues, as we've heard this many times over the years. Bottom line, though, is Locke is a very important place. It's a place where people live, where they work, business enterprises. We have artists. We have folks who are very talented, who are very creative. And it has a very, very important place in our history, in our culture, and certainly in the day-to-day life of the Delta. And some of the very same folks here that maybe don't agree about Locke have appeared, though, at hearings when the Delta's been threatened or when Locke's been threatened. And so there is that commonality. And I think in the spirit of that, the reason why, again, it's not hesitancy as much as it is, at least my take, having been with this for the years that I have, it's not a matter of taking sides and somebody wins and loses, because a lot of times that's what's happened down here. Well, we went to the board and, they were on our side, or we went there and they weren't on our side. I think this is about certainly being, to your point, Supervisor Frost, trying to be equitable, recognizing that the situation is strained and, people aren't going to like each other because of something we do or don't do at this board. But I think certainly the challenge in a very diplomatic way that the chair issued, I'm willing to sit with folks, and we had 2 community sessions in which we heard from folks, and some of those folks were very pointed in their concerns about not only what the LMA may or may not have done, but also the county's responsibilities. And again, even without this, we still have responsibilities. It's an important town, and all the rules apply to this town as it does to other communities in the unincorporated area. And so with that, again, just not to belabor it, it's not because I don't appreciate the good work. And again, I'm certainly respectful of people's views through their LMA board as well as through the poll that was taken. But that, nonetheless, in representative government, that's what this is. And as a representative, people can all disagree with me. But I still think, from the standpoint of what this county has invested, what we've asserted in document after document, what we believe in for the long-term viability of this community, it's important that if, in fact, we're going to dislodge ourselves and leave the scene and let it to the association in a more private setting under another guidance in the law to do their thing, that we do that in a way that is clearly understood by all. And again, I'm just not prepared today to say that we're just going to, by a single vote, because this would be the last time we'd have to hear it, because we're done. Basically what they presented, they're saying that's what we want you out. Not because they don't like us, but they want to go in a different direction. I respect that's the view of many of the folks, but it's not, I still think there's division in this town relative to that, and that hopefully the county maybe bring to bear, at least in reflection of what might come before us at a future date, something that would be more palatable to a greater number of folks in Locke. Maybe not, but I'm willing to give that some more time. In the meantime, we can live under what we have and recognize there are vacated seats, but they were talking about 9 versus 9 anyway. We can set this for a time to come back to us in midsummer if you'd like, so there's a time frame on it, Mr. Chair, if you'd like. I'm willing to go to work on it, ASAP.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor Peters.
Thank you. For the benefit of the supervisors who have been here less time, I would point out that, Don, you had an appointee, your chief of staff was on this board for 8 or 9 years.
Correct.
And it made no difference. What, to me, having the Board of Supervisors involved, or the county, is that it's a great way for dissidents to say, oh, can't do anything, you got to go to the county, you got to have an issue, you got to get on the agenda. It takes 9 months by the time they agree to get to do all of that. I'm just making up 9 months, but I know it's a long time. And I think having the county on this board is something that creates more problems than less, because it's a delay tactic by those who don't want to settle on an answer. That's why I think that we should be off. And, pretty clear to me, the community voted on it. And I believe in that process, as you mentioned. So that's where I am.
Supervisor Frost.
My issue is that the board is representing the homeowners in a private homeowners association. And so they were voted into that position, and they, during their conduct of business, voted the changes to the bylaws, and it seems like it was clear that they wanted those changes. And I'm not sure it's our job as a government entity, a public entity, to participate in a private homeowners association anyway. I wonder how we got there in the first place. And I can understand what Supervisor Peters is saying regarding, it just creates one more level of, where people can go and delay things, and there can be added problems. This is hard because I sympathize with Supervisor Natoli, who has compassion for a community that's obviously struggling. But I also am not sure it's our place as a public entity to to supersede what that homeowners association board has voted upon. I know we have to approve it. I just think it would be better if it was just completely private and we were out of it. And it doesn't look like delaying it has got us anywhere. We've spent a lot of time and resources trying to fix this over time. So my inclination is to support staff's recommendation and support what the Homeowners Association is asking us to approve, which is the change to their bylaws.
Is that a motion, Supervisor Frost?
I can if you want to make the same motion again, I can second it, or I can make the motion, and
Okay.
I don't think it's going to carry.
Yeah, right.
It's not going to go anywhere.
I'd move we approve the staff recommendation, items 1 through 4.
Second.
Okay, I will say for myself, as I think it's clear what I said earlier, but I will tell you, if this comes back and we're in the same place, my patience is gone. And I would expect that it would be worked out among the parties. Otherwise, I will have a different tone the next time we hear this. But I am willing to and would be interested in seeing Supervisor Natoli have an opportunity to fix this once and for all. And so I won't be supporting the motion at this time. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
And the motion fails.
Supervisor Natoli?
Yes. Then I would offer a motion that we reject the proposed bylaws, or I would soften it to say to remand it back to the LMA, if we can do that. I don't know, again, but if it's not, I see that, so then we reject it, send it back to the LMA, and continue to work on the issue.
And I don't...
Do we need it? Do we need to do this?
You don't
Since
need
the
to?
motion
No,
failed?
but I do want to give us direction to staff, though, that were to happen, and that I would like it sooner rather than later to get this off of our plate once and for all.
So the nature of the question I'm asking, I want to make sure I'm clear. The way I'm envisioning this is between LMA, they work with Supervisor Natoli. I wasn't envisioning we were involved in this process going forward. They have their grievances, they need to work it out. Supervisor Natoli's gonna help them.
Right.
To come to some closure.
Right.
I wasn't anticipating county council or staff from our office involved in that. I just want to
Well,
clear my,
My intention, and Supervisor Natoli can clarify, my intention was exactly what you said. I mean, clearly, county council is going to have a role in anything that comes before us. But as far as this portion goes, this is a role that is between the people of Locke and their supervisor.
Sure.
and when they're ready, we'll agendize, and then our process will kick in.
And I'm just hoping that it'll be sooner rather than later.
And I think it's going to be important because if we have a town meeting, I mean, the supervisor can have a town meeting, but if there's a majority of the folks from the LA present, then they're going to need to post it for a meeting, and we'll have that conversation.
No, we will assist with all that. I just want to, I think, belaboring the point, we're not going to be the peacemakers. I think we've tried this. They need to work this out amongst themselves.
I hear you. Supervisor Frost?
So if they vote it out amongst themselves, then it comes back to us to join in?
I think what we will envision is that whatever resolution comes, we'll present it back to the board, working with Supervisor Natoli, and at that point, the board can vote yes or no on what you want.
After they take an action?
After they take an action.
Okay.
Supervisor Frost?
I have a question for county council, and that would be, do we, as a public entity, have liability on a board where there's one person in town suing them over and over? Is there liability associated with that?
On this particular case, I don't have an answer for you, but I will research it for you.
Well, they said there was one person that keeps suing them, and
Which I'm
we're on
aware
the
of.
board.
Right, and I know that their board is liable. As it stands right now, their bylaws have been rejected, so we're back to, their amended bylaws have been rejected. So we're back to where we were, where we now have a member, we don't have somebody seated, but there is a member representing the County of Sacramento on the LMA board. Whether that particular, on behalf of the county, that person brings liability to the county if they're sued. I know they were sued at something. I know June is here and can speak to this, but we had legal representation that was able to get the county out of that lawsuit, but I'll let Ms. Powles-Mays address that.
Thank you, June Powles-Mays, County Council. That has definitely been a concern from our office because there is such acrimony and there is a history of litigation by property owners and against the Management Association Board. The recent litigation that has been referenced named and did include the Board of Supervisors as defendants. However, our council was able to negotiate an agreement with the plaintiff, and the county was dismissed from that lawsuit. The previous lawsuit did not name or include the County of Sacramento.
But when they're naming the board, if we're on the board, they're naming us too. Is that correct? Or just that individual on the board?
It depends. If we have a seated board member, a seated board-appointed member, then there may be some liability that attaches. It just depends on the situation. But there certainly is the potential for that to happen.
That's a concern for me as well.
Okay. We're good?
We're good? Got it?
Item 59 is the public hearing on the benefit category change and levy of increased service charges for Castleman South subdivision within Zone 1 of County Service Area Number 1.
Okay, we'll hear a brief staff presentation, open the public hearing, close the public hearing, and then we will tabulate the votes.
Correct. Oh, was that my presentation, or?
You go ahead.
Pretty much. Thank you.
Get us back on time.
Okay, no, but yeah, it sounds good to me. Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Dorothy Kodani, and I'm a senior civil engineer with the County Engineering Division. And I am here to present the item, as you said, for the public hearing for the benefit category change and levy of increased service charges for the Castleman South subdivision within Zone 1 of County Service Area 1. The Castleman South subdivision is located 3,300 feet south of Gerber Road and 2,500 feet west of Elk Grove Florin Road. It consists of 90 residential subdivision lots. A request was submitted to initiate the benefit category change for CSA 1, which provides street and safety light services. And so the proposed change would change it from the street and safety light residential category and to the enhanced street and safety light residential category. Notices and 3 ballots were mailed to the property owners on February 22nd, and the 3 ballots were one for each of the parcels, the original parcels that comprise the subdivision. So if there are no questions from the board, we just recommend the first 3 actions listed on the board letter, which Supervisor Kennedy listed.
Any questions? All right, we will open up the public hearing. Is there any member of the public that would like to address the board at this time on this item? Seeing, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk?
Did you want me to explain what was going on with the ballots, or? Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm going to open the ballots
Drum
at this
roll.
time. So this is the legal owner, SPE Sacramento Antelope LLC, site address of 8135 Watt Avenue, voting in favor.
Flo, is that the same one?
I was directed to open these 4 ballots, and so this is what's in the ballot.
Doesn't sound like the right owners.
This was what was given to me.
Could you list the parcel number again?
203-0050-057.
What does it say at the
Okay, seeing as there's legal consequence involved here, I'm going to take a 5-minute recess and let you all work it out.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Did you know that there was a new state law as of the first of the year that allows street vendors to leave their pop-up tents up? And only if they're blocking the sidewalk do they have to move? Like all those flipping cell phone.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just found out.
Why would you pass that?
Oh, this is the ballot that they gave me.
I don't know, don't you think there are more important things for them to be doing?
We have one last sheet. Yeah, we've seen almost everything. Yes.
Sacramento County Board of Supervisors back to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Supervisors Frost,
Here.
Natoli, Peters, Kennedy.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, we're back.
Thank you. We've discussed it with the clerk, and she's ready to read off the new ballots, or the ballots that have been opened.
Madam Clerk.
We have the legal owner Harinder and Saran Jal at 8730 Castleman Road voting in favor. We have the legal owner Harinder Jal and Mandeep Kaur, 8698 Castleman Road voting in favor. And the legal owner Surjit and Satpal Jal at 8680 Castleman Road voting in favor.
That's good news, thank you. So therefore, with that, we recommend, since there is no majority protest, that the board adopt the attached resolution to approve the benefit category change and confirm the levy of increased service charges.
Move to approve. Second. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 60, approve the update of the 2018 Sacramento County Transportation Development Fee Program, Nexus Analysis and Fees. Approve the Memorandum of Understanding between Regional Transit and the county. Introduce an ordinance amending Chapter 16.87 of Sacramento County Code. Waive full reading and continue to April 23rd for adoption.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan Schuman with the Department of Transportation, and I have a PowerPoint that I will go through as quickly as I can this afternoon. So this is our second hearing on the update to the Sacramento County Transportation Development Fee, also known as the SCTDF, because it's only 5 syllables long. We were before your board back in December with a workshop on the SCTDF update. That's where we provided some background and some details on the update itself, as well as its nexus analysis, including land development and growth assumptions, the traffic modeling methodology behind the SCTDF, the projects to be funded by the program, as well as the methodologies for determining the costs of those projects, and the proposed changes to the fees, including their changes from the current fee program. So today we're back to request your approval of the SCTDF update, the Nexus study, and the updated fee schedules. We're also requesting your approval of a memorandum of understanding with Sacramento Regional Transit to implement the new transit impact fee, and then also to introduce an ordinance that will amend Chapter 16.87 of the county code to implement the updated SCTDF. Just a real quick background here. The current SCTDF currently in effect is based on a comprehensive update that was completed back in 2009. We did a revision to that in 2010. Normally, we would be looking to review and update the fees on a 5-year cycle. We were a few years behind that, mainly because of the slow economy that immediately followed the update of the 2009 version. This update is based on the general plan update that was approved in 2011, the approval and advancement of several new development specific and master plan areas, and then also the significant increase in construction costs that have occurred since the last fee update. So this update proposes to fund about $3 billion in roadway, transit, and bicycle and pedestrian improvements, that are needed to support new development through about year 2050. This is just a listing of the roadway improvements that are funded by the SCTDF, and including both the current program as well as continuing into the updated program. These are generally the same types of improvements as currently funded, other than the transit portion of it, which is changing a bit this year from the current fee. The fee update includes transit capital improvements, acquisitions that will be carried out by SAC-RT, such as high bus corridors, new bus purchases, light rail improvements, and the new bus maintenance facility. So this update is actually proposing to establish a separate transit impact fee that would be collected at the same time that the roadway portion of the SCTDF is collected, which is when we issue building permits. And then a separate fund would be set up for the fee revenues from the transit impact fee that would be then dispersed to SAC-RT so that they can expend the funds. With SAC-RT, we've developed a memorandum of understanding to implement and to manage the transit impact fee, in addition to providing for the transfer of the fees from the county to RT. There are certain requirements about expending the funds on improvements that were part of this SCTDF update. And then there's also certain accounting and reporting requirements that RT is required to follow. The MOU, along with the Nexus study and the transit impact fee, were approved by the SAC-RT Board of Directors back in January, on January 14th. Oops, back up a bit. So I want to go over some of the changes in the fees that have occurred since the workshop. So at the workshop, we presented a fee schedule as well as a list of fees per dwelling unit equivalent in each of the 6 fee districts, and we've made a number of changes to those since that time. These are based on input that we received from your board at the December workshop, some additional input that we've received from stakeholders since that time, as well as some needed revisions that we've identified just as in the process of finalizing the fee update. So we've added several new projects. This includes a grade separation of Waterman Road at the Central California Traction Railroad. This is needed in order to maintain continuity on Waterman Road as well as maintain circulation through the Vineyard community. We've also added 2 new rural road projects on Wilton Road and Alpha Mesa Road, which we determined that meet the traffic threshold in order to be included for those improvements. Also with the rural roads, we went back and reassessed the out-of-county and city trips that use rural roads. In other words, the through trips on rural roads, and determined that those were at a higher level than previously assumed, meaning that the unincorporated area development share of that goes down. And this has the most impact on Fee District 5 because most of the rural road projects are located within Fee District 5. Another key change has been we are now recommending funding the full cost of internal roadways in the SCTDF. Internal roadways are those roads that are part of a development specific plan or master plan area that primarily serve those areas. So basically, their internal road is assumed to carry 90% or more of traffic that is generated by that associated development area. In the SCTDF, there's 12 internal road projects that total about $143 million. The prior version that we presented back in December only assumed we were going to include the regional portion. That would be those that are not not funded directly by the development, and that the bulk of the cost would be carried by the associated plan areas through either their own plan area fee programs or through their direct financing of these facilities. So we've received requests from multiple developers to include the full cost in the SCTDF. The main proponents of this have been in Fee District 3. This is the Easton Glenboro development and the Cordova Hills development. And it's critical to them and has the most impact on them because about 2/3 of the internal roads, or about $90 million worth, are within those two plan areas. So the result, the net effect of this is that for those fee districts that include an internal road or one or more internal roads, there has been a moderate increase in the fees to cover those. Fee District 3, which includes Easton Glenboro and Cordova Hills, has a significant increase due to the fact that most of the roads are in there. And yes.
Interrupt you there, Director Peters. I'm sorry, Supervisor Peters.
Thank you. Dan, as I was looking at your slide, something came up that I have forgotten to ask you several times. When you look at the full cost for internal roadways, is that just to build it once, or do you put in money for when the utilities come through and the water district comes through and the you name it comes through and tears up the road? Is there any reserve for those?
No, this is, these fees will build the facility in order to accommodate the traffic from new development. So it's only the one-time construction of, and this is constructing out to a general plan full configuration of the roadway. But these fees do not cover ongoing maintenance or rehabilitation. We have been looking in some of the new plan areas to setting up more assessment-based type of funding programs through a CFD or a CSA, where there would be an ongoing source of funds coming in for that purpose. And those have been, we're setting those up through development agreements. For instance, the development agreements that have been in the works for the Cordova Hills development has included in it a component for ongoing maintenance. So this is...
So I lost part of that there. So what you're saying is all new developments have a CSD or a something to collect money for road maintenance?
The existing plan areas, you know, the ones that are actually implemented in building now don't have such a thing, but we are implementing those in some.
So we don't have it yet, but you're working on it?
We're working on that with, yes. So with Cordova Hills, with, as we advance the Elverta and the Jackson corridor developments, we're looking to establish those kinds of funding mechanisms for ongoing maintenance. But this is not the vehicle for that, because we have to have the nexus with growth for this.
How long is it going to take you to get back to us on that?
Well, they're coming in with, as these plan areas come in, as they're implemented. So as we come in with their finance plans, with their development agreements, I think we'll be hearing as we come forward with some of the new Jackson corridor developments.
Oh, so not until the developments that come in under a DA?
Yeah, they'll be coming in kind of on a case, on a development by development basis. Yeah.
And Ron Vicari with the Department of Transportation. The reason in the SCTDF program, because it's a one-time fee, it's difficult to capture those things that are continue every so often. And so you will see those now as part of the developments as they come forward, but it won't be in the SCTDF fee because of what Dan mentioned as far as the nexus is concerned and the fact that they're a one-time fee, and it's the only time that you could capture those fees.
Thank you.
Okay. And then finally, another change from the December timeframe was we have now included a inflationary adjustment, which basically brings the fees from, this is in order to bring the fees in line with the current construction costs. The fees that were represented before and are in the Nexus study are based on 2017 construction estimates. We had been presenting only those numbers before because the data that we get from the Caltrans construction cost index was not yet available. And with this continuance from March to today, we're now able to include that because that's when that information becomes available. So we're now adding in an inflationary factor, which is actually 6.4% from 2017 to 2018 in the fees that are being presented to you for approval today. One of the things that does is it makes it unnecessary for us to do a off-cycle annual adjustment, which we were going to be doing this summer under the previous structure of fees. Normally we do these annual adjustments in March, but we were going to need to do one earlier because we needed to bring the fees in line with the current cost. So we have taken that provision out of the ordinance now, and the next adjustment won't occur until next year in the same March timeframe. And this is a table that just summarizes the cost changes since the December 11th workshop that I just went over. Generally, the fee changes range from a reduction of about $1,846 per dwelling unit equivalent in Fee District 5, and that's thanks to the change in the assumptions for trips on rural roads, up to a high of $5,739 per DUE in District 3, which is due to the internal roads, since most of the internal roads fall in the Glenboro and Cordova Hills plan areas. Also before you today is the updated fee schedules. These are actually attachment 2 to the board package, so it's showing all the fees for all the different land use categories in each district. The updated fee schedule reflects new project costs. We've added 4 new land use categories: extended stay hotels, mini warehouses, high cube industrial facilities, and commercial ag buildings. And these have been added simply based on our experience in managing the SCTDF. These are categories that do come in often enough for permits that it justified creating their own fee category. For the ag buildings, we've created a fee that is a lower fee to be able to deal with these typically low trip generating uses. But we're also going to continue to look at building permits for ag buildings on a case-by-case basis, because there are a lot of cases where what's being constructed, even though it's subject to a building permit, it's not appropriate to assess a fee because they're not generating any new traffic. We've made an adjustment to how we fee private schools. Presently, we do it on a number of students basis. We're changing that to building square footage, like most of the other non-residential fee categories. And this is because it's very difficult to accurately track the growth in students after a building is constructed. The fees include overlaps for the 4 existing plan area fees, and I'll get to that in just a second. And then also include the inflationary adjustment that I just mentioned. And this table is just a copy of Exhibit 1 to the board package, and this is really the summary of fees for dwelling unit equipment in each fee district, kind of broken down by type of improvement, as well as by transit and also the administrative fee. And then this is a chart that is part of Exhibit 4 to your agenda package. And this is just a comparison of our proposed SCTDF rates with adjacent jurisdictions that have similar fee programs. One of the difficulties in comparing with other jurisdictions is really getting a true apples-to-apples comparison, because there's such variations between them. But in terms of the type and scope of improvements, these 4 jurisdictions are similar. This shows we're generally within similar ranges. The one bit of anomaly there is Elk Grove, who's a little bit lower, and the main reason for that is because the city of Elk Grove's fee does not fund outside travel lanes for road widening projects. that's left to the fronting developers, whereas in the SCTDF, we fund all of the roadways. So that's probably the biggest reason for the difference between those. As I mentioned, the updated fee schedule reflects credits, which is a reduction in an SCTDF fee liability for those developments that are already paying into a plan area fee, and there's overlapping facilities between the SCTDF and the plan area fee. So we credit against the SCTDF and lower that fee to account for that overlap. And so the fee schedule includes a credit for those 4 plan areas, North Vineyard, Vineyard Mather, and Antelope, which have existing fee programs. And as new plan areas come online and implement their financing plans and their fee programs, a similar analysis of this overlap will be made, and a similar credit will be made against their SCTDF. So you'll see that next month when the special district groups brings the updates to the North Vineyard Station and the new fee program for the Florin Vineyard Community Plan. That will include an adjustment to the SCTDF as well. Again, before you today is an ordinance amending Chapter 1687 of the Code to implement this update. The amendments mostly include cleanup language and some new definitions, and this is really to address issues that have come up in our experience in managing the program, and just for clarifications. The ordinance will also implement the new transit impact fee. It reduces rates for building canopies, just to make some clarifications on building canopy construction. And it adds 2 new exemptions. One is for electrical vehicle charging stations, and the other is for certain agricultural buildings where we've determined that there's no trip generation. And then there's some additional provisions in the ordinance that allows for a review of ag building permits for trip generation. And our outreach on the SCTDF has continued since the December workshop. We have notified all the CPACs about the SCTD update and have provided them with the materials, information, and details on the update. We've also made presentations to both the RT Board of Directors as well as the Connector JPA Board of Directors, both in January. And then we've continued to have some meetings and correspondence with stakeholders in the development community, some of which has led to some of the changes that we are presenting today. One of the things that we're going to continue to do in the coming months with the development community is working with them to define the details for credits and reimbursements from the SCTDF. The county code does include general provisions for us to be able to provide credits to developers or reimbursement for those that actually build a SCTDF funded project, and it's their way of recovering what they pay to build that facility or getting a credit against their fees. We will be working with them to really kind of work on the details of credit agreements and provisions in the coming months, but it really has no bearing on what's being presented to you today. And then one other key issue that we want to address with the development stakeholders is the phasing of transportation mitigations and conditions. We really call those triggers, development triggers, and we've been working on several different methodologies for that over the years. As you may know, there have been different ways of attempting to keep the implementation of improvements on track with development as it occurs. And we're going to be working with the development community in the coming months to try to clarify that, as well as arrive at a methodology that works for both the county and doesn't burden individual developers with high costs. And so that concludes my presentation, and we can answer any questions. We also have John Long from DKS Associates, our consultant, who put pretty much all of this together, and we can answer any questions.
Supervisor Natoli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Dan, for the presentation. Obviously, you boiled down many hundreds of pages into a fairly short and concise presentation. I wanted to first extend thanks for you and Mr. Vicari and Ms. Penrose and others for a review of the concerns that had been identified. In fact, the day I got delayed to the board meeting and just got put over, but as relates to the discretion vested with the director on the applicability of fees as relates to agricultural buildings. And also, I think the work had been done previously to accommodate a commercial agricultural category. In one case, one example was the greenhouses that were on land that was already being used, but basically we're putting cover over them, and how they equated, trying to find, you guys were finding lower fee categories. I think in that case you used a convalescent hospital as being the lowest fee, but yet how you would apply it. And so I think you now give flexibility certainly to the department and its discretion to fairly apply it, certainly recognizing any contribution of traffic that would have to be accounted for in the fee. So I want to thank you for that. Question I had was, you touched on it just in one of the last bullets, but I think it warrants maybe just a bit of further information for my colleagues on the board here. Is when you went to the Capital Southeast Connector JPA, and we got poked at just a little bit by some of my colleagues from the other jurisdictions as it relates to contributions and a call out for the connector road in our CIP, but also how funding was available and how funds would be generated. And it was a good discussion, and one I think ended up in a pretty good place. But I think it warrants, you have it in the staff report, but just as to the takeaway and things you'll be working on as it relates to some of the comments we received. And I think it was stressed about the flexibility, but also I think the certainty became kind of the other part of the bookend as it related to when certain aspects of that connector facility were to come on, when would the money be available, how would they know that, how, just a planning lead up that it takes in order to accomplish projects of that magnitude. So I don't know if you want to share, or Ron or somebody, but just briefly for a minute or so, because I think it's important, because it may come up at SDA at some point in time, and certainly at this board as we continue to look at our fee program and how we assimilate monies for projects that are, either being counted on and or in some sort of priority order.
Yeah, our position on this has been that rather than creating a set aside in the SCTDF for the connector like we do for the transit, was that we felt we could better serve the connector and certainly the SCTDF by treating it more like other SCTDF funded projects, where we look, and we do this annually through our Transportation Improvement Program Guide process, which will be actually coming to you in about a month from now, where we can kind of weigh the different priorities that we have that are within the SCTDF. It also enables us to, if we were to simply do a set aside in the SCTDF, if you look at current development rates, you might see a few $100,000s a year accumulating, and that's not going to get very far. Whereas when we deal with it more in the larger context of our CIP, we can start to commit higher levels of funds more in a timely manner with when those improvements are expected. So actually this, for the first year, in our tip, we're going to include, for the time being, it's kind of a placeholder, but because we don't have enough information as to the timing of improvements. But and in fact, in the CIP that was just before you earlier, it was part of that. So we are now starting to represent the connector with some commitments of the SCTF funds in that. And it makes it easier for us to plan and able to be looking at all of our priorities in addition to the connector, which we will continue to make a priority because it is active, it's a critical project, and we certainly are.
And it has various segments. I think that, it was pointed out at the time at the connector JPA that, the county stepped up pretty big time when it came to the White Rock Road improvements of a couple of, I guess it's been 5 years ago now since they were completed. And that was used as an example because the question was also posed because the south of 50, those development fees are being collected as to, you know, with some of the current segments that are being contemplated out to the county line, to the El Dorado County line, as to, you know, where those fees are going, how they would be allocated. And I think, again, Dan and Ron did a good job of explaining that. Again, sitting with our fellow electeds, though, it, you know, there's some questions came back their way and certainly through me. You know, well, what about, you know, if we're ready to go, you know, for this segment, you know, how are we going to know you have the money there? How do we plan for that? And so I think, one, putting it into CIP and beginning to frame it, and then also I think beginning to track with the JPA staff and with our fellow jurisdictions on those segments that, you know, compete for dollars through other categories, but also where the county would then be a contributor to particular segments, most all the way along the connector itself. So I just, again, I wanted to highlight that because I know that it was, you know, there were some pretty pointed questions, again, very respectful, but nonetheless, I think we attempted to answer them. Folks still see it a little bit differently, but I think at least we're making some progress. So I don't know, Ron, anything you wanted to add to what Dan said?
What you mentioned earlier about White Rock Road, that's a good example of what we use to show why we think it would be better served to treat it like all the other roadways in the SCTDF. White Rock Road was a $17 to $18 million project, of which we were able to leverage a few $1 million of SCTDF fees in order to be able to build a large project like that. In addition, another example that was given was that oftentimes it is the jurisdiction that delivers the project. And to give an example of that, Camera Road in Elk Grove, in the segment that's in the Elk Grove segment is being delivered by Elk Grove. City of Folsom's delivering that segment. So it's also important that the county sees that there's a high likelihood that the county would also be the one delivering the county segments. In addition to that, just to add one more thing that was spoken about at the meeting was that we would deliver it, the county. We also have developments that have development agreements and that are required to build portions of the segments that are involved in the connector. If our developments were to build a segment within that connector, we would then enter into a credit reimbursement agreement. We would have the money to reimburse our developers. And so there was multiple reasons why we felt, and I think, and at the end the board did not, the board supported that the county would have this in our fee program like all the other roadways.
Okay. Just one final question. And so with regards to the flexibility, and I know that as we've done individual fee districts, and you showed some of the reimbursables credits in some of those districts, but you know, calling out for improvements, it's certainly anticipated in the CIP, but you know, we've, and certainly I know that Supervisor Kennedy, in the areas that we share in particular, that where you didn't contemplate the timing for a signal was going to be needed, and all of a sudden a traffic pattern emerged where it's becoming either an accident issue and or a congestion issue, and the ability then to have that flexibility, obviously with SCTDF being a contributor and, you know, kind of allowing some of their money around. So have you built in a fairly, or have you maximized as much as possible within the law the flexibility to do that? And again, always keeping track of where money comes from so that it can properly be credited in those areas or returned. But that's important because, again, you know, if experience has taught me one thing over the years on this board is that, you know, you usually get it right 95% of the time, but that's 5% when we knew it was going to be something, but we didn't realize it was going to be that quick. And then, well, we're scrambling for dollars to do it. I think you've, you know, added flexibility in those speed districts. But does this also have that ability too?
Yes.
Yeah, that's, in fact, that was something we, I guess a good word is corrected with the update back in 2009, because the older version of the development fee, everything collected in a district had to stay in a district, and it took a formal action, including coming before your board to move money between it, and that, you know, would sometimes become a budget approval task, you know. So, but now we do have that ability to shift between the districts to put them where the needs are, and of course those are all well tracked. Each fee district has its own.
Right, you won't lose track, so somebody doesn't get, at the end of the day gets, shorted, but.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, very good, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, I have no speaker slips on this. Is there a motion?
Move the item.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Unanimous vote with those members present.
And these actually won't take effect until what, probably July timeframe, when they actually, with ordinances and so forth?
Yes, the ordinance will come back for your approval on April 23rd, and then it goes into effect 60 days after that. So it would be late June.
So if people want to get in, whatever, if it looked like it was a lesser fee, they got about 60 days to scramble to get it done, right?
For some of the fee categories.
Yeah, right.
There are some that it would be better to wait.
74 days?
74 days.
Now it's tracking it, okay, thanks.
Okay, Madam Clerk, for items 61 and 62, do we need a motion?
Yeah, we do. For 61, we need a motion to continue to 514. This is the North Vineyard Station Specific Plan Development Impact Fee Program 2019 update.
So move.
Second.
Please vote. It was
Unanimous.
seconded, by the way, by Supervisor Natoli.
Okay, unanimous vote with those members present. And then for item 62, a motion to continue to May 14th of Florin Vineyard Community Plan Development Impact Fee.
So move.
Second.
Unanimous vote with those members present. And then we have county executive comments
No comment.
and supervisor comments.
I do have an adjournment.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, with no comments, then Supervisor Natoli has an adjournment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll take just a moment here to adjourn today, ask our board to adjourn today in memory of Bishop Francis Anthony Quinn, who passed away in late March 21st. I'll just read a little bit from the both the printed obituary and that was in the program, the Mass that was held a week ago Monday for him. He was the 7th bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Sacramento. He served from 1979 to 1993. As I mentioned earlier, he passed away on March 21st at the age of 97. He was ordained a priest in 1946, served in the San Francisco Archdiocese in several capacities before his ordination as the auxiliary bishop of San Francisco in 1978. And then it was a short time thereafter, in 1979, Bishop Quinn was selected to come to Sacramento. His Episcopal motto, and one which he lived, I believe, every day, and certainly his devotion to this community and to his ministry, was love God, love one another. And I think it really defined, as outlined in certainly some of the comments, the homily at his services, but his long life, certainly as a ordained priest and bishop, but his selfless ministry, many of those years spent, fortunately, here in our community. He was certainly acknowledged for his outreach. The Diocese of Sacramento includes 20 counties in Northern California, stretching from Sacramento all the way to the Oregon border. And his approach, which he showed compassion, humility, his dedication to people, and he was a very gifted communicator. He worked hard and I think strived very much so to understand and connect with those he came into contact with, and whether they were of his faith or not, he really, I think, sought out others to in search for insight on moral and social and political issues. I can remember a time back in the 80s when our surrounding area here around the board chambers, homeless were sleeping outside, and we're using facilities here and so forth, and it was a time when obviously a good deal of focus both from the media but from the community, and I know that Bishop Quinn certainly ministered to those folks, and talked with them, but he also talked with members of the board of supervisors at the time, certainly with county staff, and trying to find solutions that would meet their needs, but also recognize obviously some of the impacts on the general public when they were here. I would just note too that in many of his much of his time here in Sacramento, but certainly even upon his retirement, he didn't really retire from his dedicated ministry, and he went on after 1993 for 13 years to serve a ministry with the Native Americans in the Tucson, Arizona area. And I know that at his services there were some Native tribes that were represented there to express their love and condolences to his family, and obviously to his priestly family as well. He returned to Sacramento in 2007 and resided for the remainder of his years at Mercy McMahon Terrace, where he was again renowned. There was an article about this time a year ago where he was ministering to his fellow residents. He leaves behind his brother Donnell, or he was actually predeceased by his brother Donnell and survived by his sister-in-law, Betty Quinn, and 2 nieces, numerous grandnephews, grandnieces, and their families. And I would just note, too, again on another personal note, but that Supervisor Cerna, who obviously is absent here today because he's traveling out of state, but I know that he had a very close affinity with Bishop Quinn and visited him at least on a couple of occasions while he was there at Mercy McMahon Terrace. And I believe he was actually here when he was sworn in 2010 to his first term as Board of Supervisors, on the Board of Supervisors. So with that being said, certainly this community celebrates the life of a very wonderful person, someone who was committed to helping others, who I think really demonstrated servant leadership in his various roles, and his presence obviously will be missed, but he leaves a long legacy of service, and certainly we offer our prayers for his family. And again, I would ask that our board adjourn in memory of Reverend Francis Anthony Quinn.
Thank you, Supervisor. Yes, Bishop Quinn was a great human being, humanitarian, and Sacramentan. But before he was a Sacramentan, I will say that he, in the Bay Area, he was the fresh out of the seminary, new priest, my father's junior high school teacher.
Wow. Look at how the connections.
There you have it. Wow. So with that, we will adjourn in the memory of Bishop Quinn.